Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another CPC Strategy hosted webinar, one of many during our Q4 e-commerce brand Accelerator virtual summit. If this is your first time with us, welcome, and we hope to see more of you at future events, maybe future presentations from this summit. If this is not your first time, welcome back, and we are happy to have you here again for another webinar. We all realize Q4 and the holidays are right around the corner, so it's vital to ensure that your digital media plan is optimized for increased visibility to convert shoppers during the most competitive time of the year. So in this webinar, Crossing the New Digital Divide, your guide to marketing effectiveness, Visual IQ, a Nielsen company, will be speaking on new tactics to implement in this digital era. So quickly, before we do jump in, I would like to go over the summit. CPC Strategy and Trustpilot had presentations earlier today. Now we are having Nielsen Visual IQ's presentation. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we'll have Ad Espresso speaking towards retargeting. And then we have Privy closing the summit, talking about cart abandonment and solutions to that. So if you can't make those tomorrow, or if you couldn't make the earlier presentations, don't worry. We will be sending out all session slides and recordings to all registrants before the end of the week. So you'll have time to review them if you were able to see the presentations, or you'll be able to finally get to see them if you were not able to attend. So no worries about that. Secondly, I want to point out, well, let me introduce myself. I am Annalicia. I am CPC Strategies Webinar Coordinator, and I'll be moderating today's webinar as well as queuing up your questions on the back end. So on your GoToWebinar panel, you should see a tab that reads questions. So this is where you submit your questions for our speaker today, and I'll be working on the back end, queuing those up for our Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. Also, if you have any technical issues, technical difficulties, just feel free to chat me through the questions box as well, and I'll help you troubleshoot through the back end. Another thing I'd like to mention is our handouts. We do have some handouts available for download. These are, additional resources to kind of supplement presentations from the summit. So feel free to download those handouts as well. And lastly, we do ask that you join in on a poll question that we will be launching in just a couple of slides here. So again, feel free to send me your questions and any technical difficulties. I'll be sure to help you with those along the way. So now I would like to pass it over to Wayne, who will introduce himself and Visual IQ to you all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Annalicia. I'd like to thank you very much. It's certainly great to be here today. I'd like to also just extend a warm welcome to everybody that's joined us for this webinar. As Annalicia said, my name is Wayne Saint-Amand, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Nielsen's Visual IQ business unit. So this part of Nielsen focuses on measuring marketing effectiveness. And when I say marketing effectiveness, I mean really in all its forms, so digital and non-digital. But today, we'll be focusing in on digital measurement. So let's talk a little bit about our agenda. So this idea that marketers can take charge in the digital era is sometimes a little bit controversial because we are, in fact, in the time of the empowered consumer. Consumers have more control over how they consume media and their choices in terms of consuming advertising associated with that media and our marketing efforts. Those strengths in the consumer's hands have never been stronger, never been greater. So we're going to talk a little bit about how marketers can, in fact, take charge given those changes. Obviously, we need new tactics for new times, especially as it relates to understanding what's ultimately going to resonate with consumers and what's going to be effective, which is why measurement is so important. And then I think it's important to understand challenges in the light of your role as a marketer, particular role-based scenarios as we think through some of the challenges in this area. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about a form of measurement called attribution, which obviously, given what we do in the world, we're happy that it's all the rage, but we'll talk a little bit more about attribution. And then, of course, we'll take your questions, and we do welcome those, as Annalicia stated. So, Annalicia, shall we start off with that poll question?
Yes, so I'll be launching the poll question. Feel free to answer, everyone. I'll be sure to read the question and responses out loud. So the poll question is, how far along are you in your marketing effective measurement journey? So are you just about to take the first steps? Are your feet a little bit wet, but you need more practice and process help? And that's why Wayne's here today. Are you a pro using last touch measurement for digital, but you want to explore multi-touch attribution? Or are you getting started with multi-touch attribution now? Or lastly, multi-touch attribution and marketing mix modeling are old hat tricks for you. So you want to know what's next. So that's what that MTA and that MMM stand for there. That's multi-touch attribution and marketing mix modeling. So I'll let that poll question go a little bit more. I know that you all are answering it now. I'll go ahead and close it and share the results and read them out loud for Wayne. So, how far along are you in your marketing effectiveness measurement journey? So the majority is 52% is feet are wet, but they need more practice and process tips. The next majority here is 33% are just about to take the first steps. So we're happy to have you here tuning into Visual IQ's presentation. And then 5% spread across Last Touch Attribution Pro, getting started with multi-touch attribution, and multi-touch attribution and marketing mix modeling are old hat for me. So those were 5%. So the majority lies in taking the first steps and the feet are wet. So I'm sure everyone has a lot to learn today here from Wayne. So Wayne, I'll pass it off to you now if you want. I think right now the screen that we're seeing is your desktop.
Yeah. Yes, it disappeared. Bear with me.
You're fine. You're fine.
All right. Fantastic. All right. You get to see my messy desktop with all the files on it.
Not too messy.
All right. Not too bad. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for taking that poll. It's great to see that there are a few folks who have gone into the deep end of the pool, but there are many, many more of you who are still figuring this out, who are trying to learn, trying to create the construct within which, your measurement models will operate. There's the space is very complex. There are certainly a lot of vendors in it. And hopefully today we'll give you at least a start for how to approach it from a thinking perspective. And you can sort of take it from there and start building your own context. So obviously, as we talked a little bit earlier when we were exploring the agenda, the world has changed, right? The game has changed, and digital is now one of the most important drivers of this evolution that's taking place. And understanding what's working and how to assemble the correct mix of tactics in a world with digital, with cross-device, offline components, this is one of the biggest challenges that marketers now face. And I think, we all as marketers need the kind of intelligence that reduces the complexity of this puzzle. And this lack of intelligence, this marketing intelligence, really can lead to making decisions in the dark, right? And having lots of blind spots that can really impact the effectiveness of your marketing and certainly impact your ability to measure it. So let's jump into this and explain some of the forces that we as marketers have to take control of to produce the outcomes that not only we desire, but that we need to produce. So let's take a look a little bit at kind of the digital era, right, and how it's changed over time. So, we know that over the past 20 years or so, we've seen an unbelievable period of innovation. And this has disrupted the way that we live, the way that we work, and the way that we play. Digital technology has created a new set of challenges and opportunities for all of us marketers. Some marketers don't understand how much digital has changed marketing. They feel a lack of control and don't have the insights needed to get the performance that they so desire. So if we look at a timeline of digital innovation, which we see here on this screen, we see how rapidly that this explosion has occurred. Starting off in the 90s, in 1990, the World Wide Web, as we know it, began. Then Google emerged around 96, LinkedIn emerged around 2002, Facebook in 2004, Twitter and the iPhone both launched in 2007. And then the thing that sort of really changed it all for us as marketers, real-time bidding, emerged in 2009. And this, of course, has changed the way that we advertise forever. To give you a sense of the reach of digital, here are some interesting facts. So in 2010, the average buyer checked 5 sources before making a purchase. But by 2013, research shows that number has grown to 12. Google now gets over 3.5 billion searches per day and 1.2 trillion searches per year worldwide. And I bet you, we dug up that stat recently. I bet you those numbers are now small compared to where they are today. And today's consumer averages nearly 3 hours a day on mobile, and 25% use 3 devices per day, and more than 70% switch between those devices mid-activity. This creates havoc for anyone trying to figure out what's actually going on with consumers and trying to dedupe their actions amongst all these devices and channels, right? And then if we think about YouTube for a moment, YouTube viewers are now watching more than 1 billion hours of video per day, which nearly surpasses TV viewership. Yet, in this complex world, if we look at some data here, the source on this is a study by Accenture, 46% of CMOs say they're not prepared to pursue digital marketing opportunities. Obviously, there's a lot in that number. There's a lot of details that need to be unpacked to really understand the study. But the fact that fewer than half of people who hold that CMO title have this level of insecurity about maximizing what they're doing with their digital spend and their digital marketing tells you that there's a lot of opportunity to improve, and that probably all of us need to do a better job of kind of figuring this out and finding how to maximize all of these new opportunities. So as we look at new opportunities, let's take a look at some of these. The digital era has changed many things for marketers, but most significant perhaps is how it's revolutionized the way that we interact with, the way that we connect to and learn from, and even cater to the audiences of all of our marketing efforts. We have new ways to measure and improve our efforts as well. Consumers today leave digital footprints behind that enable marketers to understand their behaviors and preferences. Without that information, we are able to more effectively reach consumers with messaging that resonates with them as individuals. So if you think about your own behaviors online, what you search for, what ads you click on, perhaps which websites you visit, and how long you stay on a certain page, it becomes pretty clear that all of that information could tell companies like the ones you represent, a lot about your activities. Not only do we have the ability to track consumers, but today we can also determine how effective those targeted marketing efforts were across our audiences. We can understand and cater to our audiences, measure marketing and media effectiveness, and even optimize our marketing strategies without having to actually put marketing campaigns into effect. And that's the key, is that we can scenario plan without spending $1 on media to figure out if those proposed spends are going to be effective. But how? That's, of course, your question, right? How the heck do we do that? Well, multi-touch attribution, sometimes known as MTA, is probably one of the more sophisticated tools in the modern marketer's toolbox. MTA, if it's run the right way, MTA tends to use complex, algorithmically driven models that determine the amount of fractional credit that should be applied to each of the influential touch points in the consumer journey. And those touch points are all of the tactics, typically, in a media campaign or in a marketing campaign. So in terms of key performance indicators that matter most to your business, this is what we're talking about, is those KPIs. Each one of those touch points should drive towards a key performance indicator that matters most to your business, that creates the kind of outcome that you need to be considered successful as a marketer, but also that drives the right activity for the business as a whole. This kind of output gives us an accurate picture of which addressable media channels, campaigns, publishers, even the creative and the keywords are influencing your consumers, and by how much. This is what we mean when we say fractional credit. So let's go ahead and dissect this a little bit. So MTA, multi-touch attribution, relies on the digital footprint that's left behind by consumers. This footprint is created by tracking behavior at the user level on what we call addressable channels. Addressable channels enable us to track activity at the user level using cookies or pixels and tags. So search, social, display, affiliate, email, these are all examples of addressable channels. Traditional channels, such as radio, magazines, billboards, have non-addressable touch points, which means they cannot be tied back to a specific user. So, for example, it's impossible to know when a specific user has been exposed to a magazine ad. Addressable media has given rise to our ability to understand consumers, who they are, what they like, and how they behave. And as a result, we can cater our marketing activities to meet those needs. And we and many others in the industry call this people-based marketing. People-based marketing enables us to personalize our marketing efforts, improving each individual's consumer experience. So let's address some of these challenges. As companies get increasingly sophisticated in their people-based marketing abilities, consumers are beginning to expect personalized experiences. So companies that don't meet consumers' needs are quickly falling behind. So of course you ask, so how do you keep up, right? Well, without the right tools, people-based marketing is definitely challenging, right? If not impossible, perhaps. Companies are experiencing challenges that they've never had before. I know I am as a marketer. In today's world, being able to reach and engage your best customers or your most productive prospects requires a sophisticated understanding of both tools and tactics and having a clear strategy and vision. One of the common challenges experienced by companies is the fact that different metrics and KPIs are used across paid, earned, and owned marketing channels, which makes it really difficult to measure all of your efforts on the same scale and derive the insights you need into how your channels are performing against one another. Different internal teams may measure different channels. I'm sure as you consider this for yourself, you probably know that different marketing groups and different marketing team members have their own ways of measuring effectiveness and their own silos. So different channel managers may take credit for a conversion when in reality it was not their channel which had the greatest impact. Or, for example, a company may look at the last channel a consumer interacted with, otherwise known as last touch, before converting, and give it all the credit when in fact other channels contributed to that conversion. This is where the idea of fractional credit comes into play. So as you are running all of your marketing efforts, you've got a complex mix. What is the impact of one of those mix elements on another? And how can you determine the best interplay of all of those activities to produce the best conversions against your KPI? This is the crux of the issue. Another challenge is understanding how to correlate online activity with offline activity. You could argue that this in many respects is a holy grail. So this kind of correlation, such as point of sale purchases and in-store sales, these are good examples. Without the ability to bridge the gap between this digital and physical world, it's really difficult to optimize your marketing and advertising tactics to drive different online and offline success criteria, or even effectively manage the total consumer experience. As marketers, we're curators in a manner of speaking, right? We're curating the experience that consumers have with us as a byproduct of their interaction with our marketing. So it's incredibly important. Marketers also struggle to determine when activity across channels and devices is tied to one individual user. They might count an interaction on 3 devices as 3 separate individuals, when in reality, it's one. Marketers end up making optimization decisions without understanding of the multi-device, cross-channel consumer journey or the synergies that exist between these touch points. Most companies, not all, but most companies use disparate systems to collect data about their consumers and prospects, but do not have a way to leverage all of the data in their various CRM systems, DMPs, analytics applications. It goes on and on. However, within one platform that also tracks their marketing initiatives, this can make it difficult to know which marketing messages are resonating among particular audience segments. Obviously, given what we've laid out, this is a very challenging new time for the marketer, and it does require new tactics. Assembling the correct mix of tactics in a world with all of these digital, cross-device, and offline components is one of the biggest challenges that marketers face. And they tend to need a lot of help to reduce the complexity of this puzzle. So let's jump in and explain some of the things marketers need to take control of in order to produce the results that they desire. So multi-touch attribution, at least we believe, is the answer to reconciling all of these new marketing challenges. We've already talked quite a bit about MTA, but what is it exactly, and how does it help us solve all of these problems? How can we take a look at all these different kinds of consumers and make sense of them in a way that allows us to program their interactions to create the results that we need from a marketing perspective? So MTA is an attribution approach that determines the influence of your marketing efforts on consumers so that marketers can optimize spend and improve the consumer experience. That's really what it's all about as a marketer. You want to optimize your spend and you want to improve the experience that consumers have with your marketing. There are different MTA methods and models, including rules-based methods and algorithmic models. You may be familiar with some of the common rules-based models, things like first touch, last touch, even weighting. There are many others. To truly grasp the value of each consumer interaction with your brand, you need to know not only where their first or last interaction occurred, or what the consumer journey looks like, but also the effectiveness of each of these marketing touch points in that consumer's journey. Each consumer leaves a digital footprint, enabling marketers to create a map of that customer's journey across channels and devices. However, each channel and device has a different way of identifying consumers, so millions of IDs get associated with an individual. MTA, if it's done right, deduplicates all of these IDs, which means it identifies which are associated with a single individual. And it maps that unique individual's consumer journey across all of the channels and all of the devices that influenced their conversion. MTA then fractionally attributes credit to each touch point in those unique journeys, down to very granular levels. So I think it's helpful if we use a real-world example. So it might be that one of your customers learned about your brand through an online display ad. And actually, what's being shown on this screen is sort of a representation of this example. This customer then visited your social media page and website. They received an email from you, and finally searched for your brand online right before purchasing. Rules-based methods arbitrarily assign credit to the first touch point, say the online display ad in this model, in this example. The last touch point, online search, or evenly distribute credit across all touch points. In this case, giving each 20% credit. However, if we were using algorithmic multi-touch attribution, we might discover that this was not the case at all. Your customer was definitely influenced by the display ad and online search, but they were also influenced by social and your website. It turns out that they were not influenced by your email marketing campaign at all, so even weighting would have inaccurately given credit to that touch point, which we don't do in this example that's showing here. You can see email is given 0 credit. Not only does this give you an inaccurate sense of the performance of each of your channels and campaigns and the creatives within them, which impacts the effectiveness of your media spend, but it also inhibits you from providing a personalized experience to each customer. In this example, if you had used last touch, you would have given credit to online search alone. But what are you doing to retain that customer? How do you know what other touch points are relevant to them? So not all attribution methods are equal in terms of the level of granularity, accuracy, and depth of the insight that they can provide you. When most people think of attribution, they think of mapping the consumer journey, but it is really much more than that. Algorithmic multi-touch attribution measures the marketing performance of each channel in a consumer journey using user-level data and assigning each channel and each aspect of each channel the credit that it actually deserves. As we see in this example, a fractional weighting across these, with the outcome being the conversion KPI in this case, all adding up. Okay, so let's explore a little bit about how this is done and take a look at the science behind multi-touch attribution. Here's a small sample of different unique IDs that might get associated with an individual. If you don't have a lot of data on your customers, MTA providers, such as Visual IQ, can supplement the first-party data you do have with additional cross-channel and third-party data, such as audience data, impressions, and offline data. For cross-channel data, Nielsen Visual IQ collects user-level data using a pixel-based approach. We also leverage third-party data from Nielsen audience segments and from partners such as TapAd, BlueKai, LiveRamp, and many others to bring in additional device, audience, and offline sales data to improve the solution's ability to accurately match IDs even further. Once the platform reconciles millions of disparate user IDs to identify unique individuals across devices and environments, these attributes are used to create audience segments. So let's say we've identified the devices and environments in which this user has interacted with our brand. In addition to their demographic, behavioral, and interest preference details, let's say they are female, a homeowner, a business owner, and that they tend to convert offline. Knowing all of this information about customers will then enable us as marketers to filter attributes and create audience segments. You can then evaluate the performance of those segments and optimize your marketing tactics according to what that audience responds to best. So in this example, this person might fall into these audience segments, and we can take what we know about these segments to target this individual as effectively as possible. So as you've probably figured out by now, there are multiple benefits to implementing an algorithmically based multi-touch attribution solution. But let's go a little bit deeper into some of the benefits associated with this. So let's start with accuracy. The most accurate marketing attribution, we tend to believe, is performed by MTA solutions that use complex algorithmic models, which assign fractional credit at the marketing dimension level for every touch point. And they use predictive analytics to produce granular media spend recommendations. It's important, though, to note that, not all algorithmic models are the same. Some rely exclusively on models like game theory or path-based models, which algorithmically compare user journeys across touch points to isolate the fractional influence that a given touch point has on a specific KPI. These approaches measure user journeys at the channel level only, and all the dimensions within that channel receive the same attribution weight, even though they are likely to have had varying degrees of influence. Attempts to optimize one marketing or media dimension in isolation will turn out to be inaccurate using this approach. The best MTA solutions don't rely on making comparisons between journeys. Instead, they use sophisticated algorithmic models for assigning fractional credit of a KPI event for every dimension level of every touch point. So for frequency, a second benefit of algorithmic MTA is the ability to measure results and optimize channels at high levels of frequency, basically in near real time, ingesting the very latest marketing performance data. So as you consider this, we've been talking for some time now here in this webinar about digital, right? If you, as a marketer, are forced to move at the speed of digital, we tend to think that your marketing that your marketing effectiveness measurement should also move at the speed of digital. So speed matters big time. How frequently the platform collects the data and then models the data has a big, big impact on your ability to effectively optimize it and get the most from your media spend. Let's look at granularity. Another benefit is the ability to understand performance and optimize within channels at all levels of granularity. MTA ingests user-level data and can deliver optimization recommendations down to the most granular level, even so far as keyword, placement, or creative. Now let's look at audience identification. The ability to identify your audience is certainly another major advantage, and it's critical if you care about people-based marketing initiatives. MTA tracks and measures activity at the individual level by deduplicating the multiple IDs associated with a single consumer, which renders the most accurate user-level view of the consumer journey. Being able to identify disparities in performance by audience can uncover potential targeting and optimization opportunities. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of partner integrations. And what we really mean here is integration with data partners. One of the amazing benefits you have if you're implementing the right kind of multi-touch attribution solution is that it can become an integration hub for all of your marketing performance data across all of your activities, all of your digital addressable activities, and provide you with that single real-time view of marketing performance by audience segment. This is very, very powerful. So here's an example of one of those partner data integrations with Facebook. And it is important to realize that in today's digital world, MTA or an MTA platform, it can't do everything on its own, right? It needs the data, comprehensive data, to deliver the kinds of insights that can make, that can take your business to the next level, your marketing efforts to the next level. And these days, the need for data outside of what you have in your CRM system or from your DMP this need is greater than ever before. Social platforms, has a significant impact on consumers. And of all those social networks, Facebook probably looms the largest. Due to strict requirements, however, few companies understand how their Facebook ads are performing compared to all of their other channels and publishers. And the truth is, few attribution vendors can offer visibility into Facebook. As a result of the partnership that Nielsen Visual IQ has, we have access to every Facebook impression served across all Facebook properties. Additionally, this data is passed at the Facebook user ID level, enabling a UID sync with our data and true people-based marketing architecture. And aside from a relatively small handful of partners, no other vendor in the market has access to this user-level impression data for all consumers, not just converters at the ID level with Facebook. So for example, one of Visual IQ's customers was struggling due to its lack of understanding of the value of Facebook relative to other marketing investments. And as you can see from this case study, from this data here on this slide, the partner we're talking about, the customer we're talking about is O2. O2 is one of the largest mobile telecom providers in the UK, a la an AT&T or a Verizon or a T-Mobile domestically here in the United States. So again, one of Visual IQ's customers, O2, was struggling due to its lack of understanding of the value of Facebook relative to other marketing investments. Without the ability to track consumer exposure to Facebook ads across all devices, including Facebook custom audiences, the company was unable to quantify the full effectiveness and ROI of its Facebook spend, or understand how the social platform worked in combination with other channels and tactics. Nielsen Visual IQ responded to this need and launched a pilot program with O2 and its agency Havas that combined Facebook advertising impressions with the MTA measurement capabilities. And after a successful pilot, Nielsen Visual IQ was able to show stakeholders at O2 and Havas that Facebook was a key component of their marketing and media strategy, and uncover Facebook's value down to a granular level. The results uncovered that O2 improved converter rates by between 16 and 123% when Facebook custom audience placements were used in combination with other digital channels such as affiliates, paid social, and paid search. And again, without access to this data, getting pumped into the model, this kind of insight was completely blind to O2, and they had blind spots in their data. With access to this Facebook data, these new insights allowed them to adjust their overall mix appropriately and continue to drive the high performance that they wanted out of their marketing. So let's look at challenges and look at them in light of role-based scenarios. So one of the key ways to accelerate progress along any complex journey is to know what challenges might impede your progress. So let's walk through some of these challenges and also discuss how multiple roles in a marketing organization can approach similar challenges in very different ways. So you might be thinking, this is all well and good, right? But there's no way MTA would work at my organization. And we would challenge you, to think, well, why is that? What are some of these marketing effectiveness challenges? Do your various brands or agencies work in silos? Do different internal groups use different key performance indicators, different data sources, or operate on different cadences? Is there a lack of communication across teams? Well, we would say these things are present everywhere and that you're not alone. Many organizations face issues like this that prevent them from being as effective as they could be. Let's continue on with these marketing effectiveness challenges. So marketing effectiveness is challenged by internal and external teams that don't speak the same language in terms of their goals and how they measure performance. Some focus on traditional media over digital, and some care more about success metrics like the number of impressions, clicks, or conversions than buying metrics such as total sales or average purchase value. So let's take a look at some use case scenarios. And this is what we talked about when we mentioned roles. Marketers at different levels of the organization also use different metrics. They work on different time frames, and they often don't communicate across channels. And I'm sure you can identify with one of these situations. So, if you're CMO of the company, lucky for you, it's budget planning time again. Many of us are in budget cycles now. You need to justify your current marketing spend to other C-suite leaders and decide how to allocate budget and coordinate messages and experiences across all of these channels. You ask the VPs of marketing and media to report on which channels are driving business objectives for each target audience, so you can use that information to reallocate budgets to achieve higher top-line growth and better bottom-line efficiency. But you quickly discover that your VPs are not using a single source of truth. Their data is conflicting, and different departments are claiming credit for the same conversions. What do you do? Let's shift now. You're a VP at your company. It's the end of Q2. Last quarter, the brand launched a new multi-channel campaign to drive sales of a new product, but the campaign fell short of its performance goals. The VP needs to know how to best allocate spend in order to increase sales by 20% in the next quarter, Q3. Since a business rival is launching a competing product, the marketing messages need to resonate with target customers and compel them to take action. You ask the managers of paid search, display, email, and e-commerce to report on cross-channel interactions before deciding how to best allocate quarterly budget to reach those Q3 targets. You soon find out that there is no way to derive holistic, multi-channel insights, and each team has a different understanding of the impact of their channels. Very frustrating, right? Okay, let's shift. You're a channel manager at your company. It's Monday, and there are campaigns rolling out Tuesday and Thursday to different audience segments. You need to boost click-through rates to meet the weekly KPI, so you check the response to last week's campaigns and set up A/B tests for the emails going out this week, tweaking creatives for each audience segment to see which raises the click-through rate. You then optimize the email by segment and push them out to generate a higher return. However, when the campaign results come in, your CTRs are even lower than the previous week. Could this be because you were relying on data that was not real time and did not take any historical information into account? These are all real world scenarios that we all grapple with. So we would argue that if you're in this kind of situation and you're struggling with these scenarios, it might be time for an upgrade to Attribution. This drive to really know and understand individual consumers has led to the rise of people-based marketing approaches. And while we believe this is absolutely the right way to think about marketing and advertising, there are challenges and requirements that you have to keep in mind as you formulate your own strategy. If you feel as if you've ever been one of those CMOs, VPs, or channel managers, we would argue it is time for an upgrade. The benefits of MCA go beyond performance optimization and people-based marketing. MCA also addresses the most common challenges to marketing effectiveness by providing a central repository for all of your data so that every team is using the same source of truth, working towards the same goals, and benefiting from near real-time user-level insights. And to be effective, every member of your team and your agency partners need a holistic picture of performance. New tactics require new solutions that make it possible for your organization to work together towards these shared goals. We always think it's imperative to understand, we've talked a lot about context and theory and situations and roles, but there are a lot of really incredible leading marketers out in the real world that are achieving more that, they're getting these benefits of marketing measurement and multi-touch attribution. Here are 4 examples: Cancer Treatment Centers of America, Petco, H&R Block, and Roku. So with multi-touch attribution, Cancer Treatment Centers of America was able to understand the interplay of digital with TV to show the value of their mix of activities rather than single channel in isolation. Using this, they were able to make the case for increased digital investment, specifically social, because of its beneficial impact on other media spend to drive inquiries into their hospital treatments. I know we're running a little tight on time, so we're going to jump down to the bottom one at Roku. So at Roku, MTA helped them discover how important their blog content was as a customer acquisition channel and the fractional role that it plays in influencing the performance of their other acquisition tactics. So it's interesting. It's not a typical path for conversion. Blogs are considered great information, but without the right kind of measurement, the idea that the blog was actually a really powerful tool within their funnel would have been blind, would not have been visible to Roku. So I think for more information, we'd certainly invite you to visit visualiq.com/resource center. We go into great detail, even greater detail, if you can believe it, than this webinar on this specific topic, as well as dozens of others. There are dozens of free white papers, videos, case studies available. And if you're interested in learning more, that library is free and open and accessible to you. So we certainly welcome your visit and download of content. So Annalicia, I think we have probably at least a few minutes for questions. Why don't we move on to that?
Yeah, we definitely do. I know that we have gone over a little bit more than promised, so we apologize for that, but I think we should address at least a couple of questions that have come in from the audience. So thank you, Wayne, for the presentation, for going so thoroughly into the marketing effectiveness and really the importance of multi-touch attribution and just attribution in general, just to ensure marketing effectiveness all in all. I know that we on our end are always trying to figure out the best ways for attribution. So maybe I'll start with a question coming from Jamie. And this came earlier in your presentation, and he was wondering the difference between people-based marketing and an AI digital campaign.
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to define both of those things, but what is really central for marketers is that you can target the audience segments that are going to resonate most with your ideas, your campaign elements, whatever your conversion KPIs are that you care about. And you can't actually discover that until you've done some measurement, and that you can look at that measurement. You can have a view of your performance by the audience segments you care about. So that you can see how your efforts are resonating with those particular people. So it's that people-based view of performance, or that audience-based view of performance, that is so critical to any people-based marketing strategy. And regardless of what you call it, it is really, really critical to not only be able to target groups of individuals that you care about most, but to be able to report your performance in exactly the same way, to understand if you're driving the outcomes that you want and that you need.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. Hopefully, Jamie, we answered your question there. Now, I do have another question here coming from Mary, and I think we'll close it out with this one. So how do you collect the data that you use in your multi-touch attribution model and platform?
It's a great question. The answer is there are many answers. As I think I mentioned during the presentation itself, we work with many outside partners. So, for example, if you have a DMP, we work with many first and third party data providers to get our audience segment data. But we are also using our own proprietary, what we call our VUID, our Visual IQ Unique ID, which is a pixel and tag strategy that is out there collecting that data and allowing us to get that people-based view of performance and to deduplicate what might look like lots of people, but might really be the same person across multiple devices and channels. So we use a mix of outside partners for data as well as our own proprietary data gathering strategy through our Pixel and Tag.
Okay, great. And then I'm actually going to close. I'm going to ask one more question. So I know that you touched on this a little bit earlier when you were speaking about Roku and that Petco slide a couple slides ago. But what are some typical results that your clients see after implementing multi-touch attribution?
Yeah, so what we find is when we interact with customers and we start to look at their data, what we find, roughly speaking, is that fully 25% of their data is having no impact on their stated KPIs at all. So we would argue that's massively under-optimized, sub-optimized, and is creating a ton of waste. And that, that data comes from an internal look across billions of transactions within our own customer base across a 6-month period. So 25% wasted. And what we see is that typically we're able to drive optimizations that improve budget utilization by as low as 20%, sometimes 25, 30, even 40% improvement of achievement of the KPI. Now, the KPI could be a different thing depending on what you care about. If you're an e-commerce company, it might be transaction to revenue, right? If you are a B2B company, maybe you're trying to drive somebody to download a white paper or a case study, and that's your KPI. But whatever that KPI is, we're generally able to see double-digit percentage improvement by implementing a multi-touch attribution strategy.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Wayne. I want to say, unfortunately, we have run out of time. I know we went over, but I had to address those questions that you all sent. I want to say thank you to you, Wayne, again, for going through this presentation. I want to say thank you to our audience for tuning in. If some of you tuned in for all 3 presentations, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. If you were here for Wayne's presentation, we also appreciate it. We understand that 45 minutes to an hour to 3 hours is extremely valuable. And we do appreciate that you chose to spend it here with us. So thank you to our audience. Thank you to Wayne. A quick reminder that our summit does continue tomorrow. We have 2 more presentations, retargeting and cart abandonment. There'll be some great presentations, so please tune in for those as well. But this is Annalicia, and I'm signing off from CPC Strategy in San Diego.
Thanks, everyone.